Well, hello and welcome to another edition of Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. We're a team meeting to discuss everything healthcare. I'm your host, Shawn Needham, along with my wonderful wife, Janet, and we are streaming live from the Moses Lake Professional Pharmacy podcast studio. And it is just us today. We try to do this at least once a quarter with us, just Janet and I, because we are such a good team together when we talk about things. This is something I'm more interested in than she is, but she is still an expert in the field of drugs as a pharmacist and hormone replacement. We're going to be talking a little bit about that today, but mostly with the rise of drugs in the gym culture. Um, if you haven't noticed lately, there's a lot of influencers on social media that are influencing a lot of younger kids. And let's just go ahead and stream Logan Dishman out there, Zoe. Here's Logan Dishman. He's a 17-year-old kid. He weighs 240 pounds. He almost died a few weeks ago in the hospital. This is what young kids are watching and being influenced by in the gym culture. He started using anabolic substances when he was 15. Now, in my opinion, I don't know where his parents are, but his parents should really be looked at for, I don't know what to call it. I'm not even going to say, but it is not something that a 15-year-old should be injecting in their bodies. So what do these kids do? It's not just kids, but adults that are influencing these young kids in these gyms, and it's rampant. My kids both work out. I've got two young men that are 23 and 25. They are definitely very consistent about working out, and they see this in the gym culture. They know who does the drugs. They know if they needed to, where they could get the drugs. And the problem is these people that are influencing, like Logan Dishman, are, kids want to look like them. Go ahead and unstring that. And the problem is the only way to look like them is to inject a bunch of synthetic stuff in your bodies. Jan and I are experts on hormones. We are both pharmacists that specialize in hormones. We've done that for over 25 years. The stuff these guys are injecting in their bodies is not natural to their bodies. They are injecting things like Anavar and D-bol and Trimbolone, all these things that are not natural to their bodies. And it is completely throwing their bodies out of kilter. It raises their triglycerides. It lowers their HDL, partly because of the way the drugs affect the liver. So this is not just testosterone, people. Yes, testosterone is an anabolic hormone. There's no doubt about it. It is natural to our bodies, okay? But most young men should not need testosterone. So any people out there that have young men thinking about it, or young men that are thinking about it, don't do it. Don't go down that road. You should not need testosterone therapy until you're 40, as long as you eat, sleep, and move and lift heavy things. Janet, what do you want to say about this culture?
Sure. So from the perspective of a pharmacist, since we specialize in hormones, we focus on balancing and optimizing people to a healthy level. And this is the extreme. This is why we see testosterone being vilified and being under the DEA and being controlled. And it actually decreases access to people that actually need products. So that frustrates me. But if we are looking at the biology of how we develop over time, it really taxes these kids' organs. Remember, your heart is an organ, that's a muscle. So that's going to be triggered with all these drugs in a very unhealthy way. Many times we will see bodybuilders over time, especially those that are at the higher levels that are taking so many different products, will actually stress out their kidneys, whether it's the drugs or it's the hydration issue, that they overhydrate and underhydrate. But it's not very healthy. So now you're starting this at the time that you're developing your bones and your muscles and your brain and all your organs, and you're really setting yourself up for failure. One of the things that Shawn and I observed, especially from the gym culture, and this is when we were in our mid 20s to 30s, is that people can bulk up and put all this weight on their body, but it's no different, in my opinion, than being obese, because too much weight on your body frame stresses your body. It's not healthy. It's not good for you. So this is an extreme. So not only am I frustrated for the patients that really do need the therapy and there's restrictions that are placed on because of this type of thing, but now we are taking young men, probably some women too, or girls, and we're developing in a crazy manner. So I think it's going to shorten their longevity. That's my concern.
Well, speaking of that, Rich Piana, Zoe, will you go ahead and stream his picture? So Rich Piana is a big influencer. I should say, let me back up. He was a big influencer in the health and wellness space. So he was a bodybuilder. I don't remember what year, but he died at like 40 some years old from a heart attack. And of course, some of the bodybuilders will defend that it wasn't because of the drugs he used. But come on, look at this guy. You can tell that he's not healthy. Jan and I talk often about how important lean body mass is and your muscles are, and we still believe that. But it's not, you don't get there by injecting synthetic stuff into your
No.
body. And this is not healthy. Like Janet said, I don't know what his weight was, but he's way, way overweight for his body frame. Doesn't matter if he only has 6% body fat.
No.
He is not healthy. Proof of why he probably died early. So please do not, young men, young women, do not go down the road of going into injecting a bunch of synthetic stuff into your body. And when I say that, I have to also, I also have to, quantify or qualify that, some of them are injecting testosterone, which, yes, we promote testosterone, but we don't promote 20-year-olds injecting testosterone. Very, very rarely will a young man in their 20s need testosterone. Go ahead and unstring that. But ultimately, you're not going to need it if you take care of yourself until you're like 40 years old when your hormone levels start declining.
Well, the natural progression of how your body builds is being interfered with. Most young men do not develop in their shoulders and pecs until they are in their mid-20s. So to me, we're putting some really big stresses on that body frame. And we've seen just the differences between our kids between being 18 and 25. The muscle development is slower, but it builds and it's gradual and it's natural. So let's back up and talk about our bones. We've seen bodybuilders, one in particular that came from a gym that we accessed when we were in our mid-20s and 30s. Later down the road, he was a package car delivery for UPS, and he stepped out of the car or the van and he broke his ankle by stepping out, folks. That's what we're talking about. His ankles were not supporting the body frame of weight that he put on with muscle. I don't care how lean it was. His body was not meant to have that much in those bones.
He was 5'2" or 3" and 210 pounds. You're not.
No.
My son, my youngest son, is 6'3", 200 pounds. That's the kind of weight you should have if you are 6 foot, not or plus, not 5'3". And some of the other things that they do inject in their bodies, and I'm just going to say, because we talked about unnatural stuff, but they use insulin, for instance, which is natural to our bodies. Insulin is one of the top 3 drugs that kills people in a hospital. Insulin lowers your blood sugar, and if you get too much insulin, you will die. If your blood sugar gets too low, you will die. You will go into a coma and you will die. They use insulin because they can eat a whole bunch of carbohydrates and then inject themselves with insulin, and it takes the glucose out of the blood to bring into the muscle and the cells, and it makes them get bigger. Lo and behold, as you know, maybe from following us, that eating a large amount of carbohydrates all the time is not good unless you're burning them. And a lot of them end up getting diabetes down the road.
Shocking.
Yeah, shocking. So then they become diabetics long term. This screws their whole body up. We're going to have a podcast on with one of our former guests that were on a couple weeks ago, and she's going to talk about how the most unhealthy she ever was when she was bodybuilding, and most bodybuilders will admit that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so what they're really doing is making a fire. Because even Shawn and I have talked about how you want to only use insulin in patients that are type 1, where they're a diabetic because they are not able to produce um, their own endogenously. But when you start throwing insulin on top to take care of all the glucose, you're just creating a fire. You're putting kerosene on a fire. So eventually, their pancreas is just going to say,
Yeah.
"No, I'm done." In a lot of ways, it's just crazy that they would think that that is healthy because really, like Shawn said, the next step is eventually you're going to become a diabetic. But this, because you're messing with the insulin, it's totally screwing up your lipid panels, so their body becomes so inflamed, their triglycerides go up. So their body is like, ready to explode, in my opinion. But let's leap also into, bigger is better. Well, maybe not. We kind of touched on the muscles and the bones, but what about our lungs? So we focus on just building our to look at the external part of our body, but what are we doing for our lungs and our VO2 max, which is really important for overall health? I highly doubt that these people are very capable of being um, able to run very far or cycle or swim or
Or walk up a flight of stairs without
right.
getting winded. I mean, look at these guys because they're carrying so much weight. Sure, there's one thing they do, and they do well. They look good on stage. I mean, they look big on stage. I don't think they look good because I know it's unhealthy. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people that think that's what they try to assimilate too. They try to look like that because that's what people are seeing, and we just want to get the word out there that they're not healthy. To be healthy, like Jen and I have talked about before, you need to have good lean body mass, so good muscle mass, but you also need to be able to have endurance. You
Right.
need to be able to run, to walk long distances all day long. These guys can't. They don't even do that. They purposely don't do it so they don't burn off any extra muscle mass, and they're just building extra muscle mass. So they're not healthy. I want to go ahead and Janet stream Tia-Clair Toomey. Um, and go ahead, Janet. What were you going to say?
Well, I mean, so we're always in this building stage, right? And that absolutely makes no sense to me because when you are tearing down your muscle tissue or you're tearing down tissue in your body, you need to repair and rebuild. So it's not like you're taking away and putting back, right? So what's happening to the natural process is that you're just building muscle, but you're not really repairing other parts of our tissue. I mean, that's the question mark in my brain. And then what is it doing to our brain? What is it doing? I mean, there's so many different ways we could go with this.
Yeah, and what happens with a lot of them too, the younger men, well, and women, we'll talk about her shortly, is that they actually, when they're taking all these synthetic drugs and synthetic hormones, it'll actually shut down their own production of natural
Mm,
hormones.
yep.
So you'll see a guy in his 30s and he's been abusing these drugs as a bodybuilder for many years, and he has a low sperm count, and he can't have a kid because he has a low sperm count because he's shut his own endogenous production of sperm down. It shuts your own testes down. So, and then that sets you up for a long-term problem. So when you do this, just if you do just a couple cycles, it can have consequences that are going to haunt you for the rest of your life. So it's just not worth it unless you know what the consequences are, and that's why we're having this, and you are top 10 in Mr. Olympia, and you think you can step on stage in Mr. Olympia and be competitive, unless you can do that, then I would never ever risk doing this because it's not healthy. Speaking of not healthy, Jan did talk about endurance, and maybe some people are arguing about that because there's some CrossFitters. And I want to say this too, like Tia-Clair Toomey, she's the most popular CrossFitter around, and people say she's natural. She gets drug tested, so she's natural. People eh, that she's not natural.
No,
Look at her.
for
Okay,
abs, there's no way.
right. Women do not get abs like that without taking synthetic anabolics. They just don't. Women don't get biceps like that or shoulders like that. Look at her jawline. You know, she is looking quite masculine in features. She is not natural. I don't care what CrossFit says. Of course, CrossFit does not have her flunk any drug tests because it would be horrible for their sport because she sells a lot of CrossFit stuff. So, but this is not natural or healthy for a woman. Janet, what do you want to comment on that?
Well, long-term fertility, also, you know, again, stress to different parts of our body. I mean, we know that imbalances cause a lot of disruption because a hormone is a messenger. It tells the body to do a certain function. So if we're going to the extreme side, you know, we're messing with a lot of things long term. So the first thing I think of fertility, but you know, what is it doing to your brain long term? You know, what is it doing to your lungs and your heart and your kidneys and you know all your organs? And so, you know, like Shawn says, you got to decide what it's worth. But this is not a normal physique. Yes, we want people to be fit. We want lean muscle mass. I mean, we go over that over and over again. But I guess our culture really needs to find out, you know, what a natural person looks like. And I actually think we should go back to some older, you know, maybe stars or people that we looked at. Raquel Welch had a beautiful body.
Right.
She wasn't overweight. I mean,
And she didn't have abs.
she didn't
She
have
didn't have big
abs,
shoulders. She didn't have big
right?
biceps.
I mean, there's many women out there that look amazing and stunning that don't look this extreme. So you know, yes, we need healthy weight, but we don't want the extreme either because again, that isn't naturally how our bodies should be. So we got to meet it somewhere in the middle. And oh man, for young girls, our cycles are super important for females. And so, you know, whether you are put on a synthetic birth control pill, which is another topic we talk about, or if you're using too much synthetics or insulin or testosterone, it's overall detrimental.
Yeah. And when you think about, Janet mentioned Raquel Welch for healthy women, but think about healthy men back in the 50s before a lot of the anabolic substances came out. Um, you know, Jack LaLanne, he was a fitness influencer in the 50s, probably one of the first fitness influencers. And when you look at him, he was lean, he was muscular, and he looked fit. Um, you know, he didn't look like, you know, a bodybuilder looks on stage nowadays. So we need to go back, and Jan and I talk about ancestrally speaking, what did our ancestors look like? There wasn't all these anabolics, there wasn't even gyms, and that's not what made them healthy. They were healthy just from their day-to-day workouts. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't work out because most of us live in a sedentary world. We have a sedentary job. So without doing, you know, other workouts in the gym or you know, what have you, we won't be healthy like our ancestors. But look at even Arnold Schwarzenegger. Most people know who
Oh
Arnold
yeah.
Schwarzenegger is. You know, probably the most popular bodybuilder ever. In fact, I'm just going to say he is. Look at his physique in the 70s versus what the physiques look like nowadays. They're night and day. In fact, Arnold looked fairly healthy. I mean, he was a lot bigger than most people at the time, and he was definitely abusing synthetics, at least testosterone and growth hormone. I don't know if he was using some of the other synthetic anabolics yet, but you know, I don't think he even likes what's going on in the bodybuilding culture now. Because the guys have just gotten too big and freaky, so they're even changing the contest a little bit to have, if you heard of Chris Bumstead, he's got more of a classic physique like Arnold Schwarzenegger did. And he's still using stuff to get bigger, but he's not using all the other stuff. One of the things that you can tell by, you know, I call them gym rats or meatheads that are really abusing stuff is they don't have a small waist. When you look at the bodybuilders nowadays, even though they have, you know, sometimes 2% body fat, they don't have small waists because they're taking all this stuff and eating all these carbohydrates, and it just bloats them up, even though they have abs. So that is one telltale sign to know that you can just tell, actually. You can just look and say, yeah, that guy's using synthetic anabolics. for sure. It's pretty easy to spot. And I'm not saying that these guys are cheating. I'm not saying that at all. I'm doing this because our goal, as always, is to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health. And I want people to know that that look is not healthy. It's absolutely not. Janet?
Well, when we're influencing younger people, I think that's something we went from the extreme of growing up in the 80s where we were anorexic and bulimic. Hopefully, we got past that. But now we have this extreme side, like there's nothing in between where you have to be either like Dia, which is, not natural with all the muscle, or to the extreme of accepting just being overweight. And what we are really reaching for is, let's find a healthy place to be so you can thrive and live a long life and have longevity. My concern for the young girls is fertility and also longevity, because I don't see, and even the boys, I don't see living like this as being something that you can continue long term. I mean, we could go to the extreme side too of the athletes that are out there. You see athletes that are in like cycling and they're osteoporotic because they're so extreme on marathon runners again. And then we could go to the football players. I mean, obviously there's extremes there, but we if that's not your goal in life, then perhaps you want to pull it back and decide, what's natural and what's normal. Because I think it almost becomes an addiction too, because you're striving for something that your body's not naturally supposed to be like. And so you're obsessed with it, and that's not a healthy place either.
And when you look at some of the professional athletics, Janet mentioned cycling. And of course, those of you that follow us, that we're cyclists, and I loved a mountain bike race. And when you look at their overall, a lot of pro athletes are not really healthy. And when you look at the guys, Tour de France is going on right now. And when you look at those guys, I mean, they weigh 145 pounds. They have no upper body mass. They do that to win their sport. Um, and that's not healthy. So same thing as bodybuilding. They're kind of on the extreme opposites of each other. So you should probably be somewhere in between.
Right.
And just because an organization says that um, that they drug test their athletes doesn't mean their athletes are natural. I think the NFL is a great example.
Yeah.
Come on. I mean,
Right.
guys, who's kidding themselves to think that the people in the NFL are natural? I mean, 250-pound people don't run 4.40s, and that doesn't change in 2 generations. MMA brags at, UFC, they brag about, well, all their athletes are drug tested and natural. No, they're not. I mean, look at the guys, especially the heavyweights that are lean. Look at them. They're not. They are using anabolics, just like any professional athlete is, in most sports, and they do that to get the edge. I don't think there's any way to stop that. They've already reached the pinnacle. It's like they need that extra 5%. And that's make it or break it for them. And that's how they make a living. But unless you are making a living that way, it's not worth the risk. It's just not.
But even that, for most professional athletes, I mean, there are some that are like goats, like Tom Brady, but most athletes on the professional level do not last that long at that level. I would say perhaps you get away with it more like, in baseball or, but is it worth going to that extreme? I mean, that's a small percentage of the population. So when we're talking about teenagers, of what reality should be and what we should look like and how we should, I mean, even let's say, I'm looking at my kids, um, you know, during the high school years when they were growing and getting taller. I think they even grew after they graduated. So why mess with that, right? Because you have a body you want to live in for a long term, and these steroids mess with your overall your body. It's just not worth it, in my opinion. It's very short term. It's just a physical thing and it's a mental thing. Overall, your body's you know going to pay for it. You're going to pay for it somewhere down the line. And, unfortunately, we are at an extreme level where these things are very accessible in the gym, which is sad.
Yeah. And, overall, your goal should not be about winning races or winning trophies, or it should be about overall health.
Right.
And the people that are doing this in the gym culture, they're not healthy. And I'm not taking anything away from these guys, or girls that do this and are super fit and lean. I mean, they're doing more. You don't just inject yourself with this stuff and you're automatically big and lean. It doesn't work that way. You still got to work out. Most importantly, you got to eat right. And so they're doing that. I'm not taking anything away from them. They are definitely disciplined. I'm just saying that it's not healthy long term. Is what we're saying. We want to warn people about that, because our goal is to um, educate and empower people to take charge of their own health. So, and this is part of it. I want to show Sam Sulek. Go ahead, Zoe, and show Sam Sulek. He's a young. I think he might be 25 now. But when you
Oh
look at
my.
him, yeah, when you look at this guy, or 23 even, I can't remember. He's about my kids' age. And this is the kind of stuff that those young men are looking at. And they look at him as being an influencer and healthy. My kids know better because we've had this discussion with my kids from the get-go. And we talked about how it is not healthy. So they know the truth. And they go to the gym to be healthy, not to look big on stage, because they know that that's probably not going to ever be their profession. So, I mean, and on this topic, you can go ahead and unstream that, Zoe. On this topic, let's talk about Liver King. I mean, one of the biggest frauds of all time. If you guys follow Liver King, you know about Liver King. Um, what was it, 2023? I think he talked about he got exposed because for years he was talking about being natural, and you can just tell the guy he's not natural just looking at him. But he got natural by eating these liver supplements and living primal and all this kind of stuff. Of course, he made millions of dollars selling his supplement line, and he got exposed back in 2023. And now, if you guys are following Liver King at all, I mean, he's going nuts. He's literally going nuts. He's been arrested. He threatened to kill Joe Rogan. He wanted to be on the Joe Rogan podcast. His empire um, is coming crashing down. So he needs a way to get in front of the spotlight again. So he made a Netflix special and all this. But um, and in that Netflix special, he even talks about how he he was making synthetic drugs and selling them in his
Yeah.
house. He was counterfeiting money. A lot of times when these people decide that they're going to inject something like this in their bodies and basically break all the rules, then what other extremes will they go to make money? And that's why I'm glad Liver King got exposed, because he's really exposing the culture for what it is. Janet?
Well, it's sad because most of the time, I'm sure somebody starts out just wanting to be
Yeah.
healthy, but then it went so far to the side that it shouldn't be. There's so many examples of people out there that are healthy without doing something that's going to harm you long term. And is it really worth it to look in the mirror and to look like one of these people? I mean, you're not Hulk Hogan. I
Yeah.
mean, just we're
Yeah,
not.
that's another one. Professional wrestlers, they're not natural. John Cena's on record saying that he's never used anything, but if
Uh-huh.
he has to, he will as he gets older. The Rock says he's natural.
No
You
way.
guys look at The Rock when he was 30. Look at him when he was 50. I'm not saying it's not possible to put on lean body mass after you're 30, but he's not natural. Look at the guy. He's overly unnatural, and he's not healthy. Um, ultimately. So, I hope you guys please share this with somebody that needs to hear this. Please pass this on. We want to let people know that you know the drugs that are going around in the gyms are not good for them. Here's another thing I want to say too, is that a lot of times when you get into that culture and you know them a little bit better, um, not only do they abuse, once they decide to go over the line and abuse these things, they abuse painkillers, they abuse sleep medications, they abuse anti-anxiety medications, they abuse ADHD medications. They abuse all this stuff because they've already stepped across that line. So then they're just going to take all these other things. So that's another thing I wanted to mention, Janet.
Yeah, I mean, it's, hi- water pills to,
To get rid of the water.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just an endless cycle. That's not natural. Don't use the pill to, deal with one more side effect of something not natural.
No. So that about concludes our podcast today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please share this with somebody that needs to hear it. We stream live on Facebook. We stream live on YouTube, X, Rumble. We are getting in the process of streaming live on Instagram, so catch us there sometimes. But if you don't catch us there, streaming live, go to our Instagram. We had over 4 million views in the last 30 days. We have 113,000 followers. That's where a lot of our information comes out of. So please go to our Instagram and share it, follow us and share it. So thank you for tuning in to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Tune in Thursday to our midweek podcast, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you.